Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to all of you on your nominations. Mr. Del Toro, thanks for taking the time to visit yesterday. I want to speak today about what we discussed yesterday, in particular the health of the surface Navy. After several incidents involving ships like the Fitzgerald, the McCain, the Bonhoeffer Shard, the surrender of 2 patrol boats to the IRGC Navy, I became concerned that there might be some cultural problems in our surface Navy in particular. So I asked some distinguished former leaders of the sea services to conduct anonymous and large-scale interviews to review this. That report just came back to me, as well as Congressman Gallagher, Banks, and Crenshaw yesterday. We've released it publicly. And I found a lot of what was in there very concerning. And I think you probably would share some of my concerns. The most concerning thing, aside from the fact that 94% of all the sailors interviewed thought that the Navy has a crisis of leadership and culture on the surface, is that they said that they have seen little institutional focus in their training over the years in warfighting and lethality. They think that these are not isolated incidents, but cultural problems. I want to stress at the outset that this is not a partisan or political or ideological issue. It spans multiple administrations, multiple secretaries of the Navy, multiple CNOs. Probably goes back to 1991 and the loss of a pacing peer competitor in the Soviet Navy. Some of these are probably familiar to you, at least in their nascent form, from your final days in the service. I think they've gotten worse since then. I'm going to go through a few of them for you. And I want to stress again, these are not my words or the words of Congressman Gallagher, Banks, or Crenshaw. These are the words of our sailors. First concern, a number of officers think administrative tasks are overburdening commanders and that the Navy promotes skills at office chores instead of operational excellence, and that this crushing bureaucratic load too often chases out good officers and NCOs. Once confirmed, can I get your commitment, Mr. Del Toro, to take a look at this challenge of administrative tasks becoming so burdensome that they squeeze out operational focuses?
Well, Senator, let me first thank you for your concern for our surface Navy. For as long as the Congress has decided to maintain and support our Navy, our sailors and our Marines have sailed on our ships and upon the seas in a very challenging and difficult environment, and I appreciate your commitment to that. I will confirm to actually look at all the administrative burdens that our surface Navy has to contend with and ensure that their primary focus is based on warfighting, training, and skills.
Thank you. A second concern is the so-called zero-defect mentality, where sailors often call it the one-mistake Navy, that one mistake could result in the end of an officer or NCO's career. They said that this fosters resentment and attrition in the force. John Lehman, former Secretary of the Navy, one of your predecessors, has pointed out that some of the finest and most storied admirals of World War II, some of whom have ships and ship classes named after them now, probably couldn't have survived in this environment. It reminds me of what Lincoln is supposed to have said of Grant when people complained that Grant drank too much. Lincoln said, "Find out what whiskey he drinks and send a case to all my commanders." But that there's too big a fear of a single slip-up ending a career. So can I get your commitment that you'll look at this so-called zero defects mentality as well, so that the commanders can focus on doing their job without a worry of constantly fearing the loss of their job?
Well, Senator, let me first attest that Josephus Daniels did away with drinking in our Navy, and I do not condone drinking on board Navy ships or anywhere else in our military services. But to this issue of zero defects, we have to empower our commanders to be able to exercise their authorities. There is no single most solemn responsibility for a commander of any unit, particularly a commanding officer of a ship at sea, than their responsibility to ship handle. And it's important not to have a zero defect mentality. You are correct. Apart from the individuals that you mentioned, I would argue that there are many other more contemporary naval leaders, distinguished leaders, who've suffered through issues in their own career. I myself, had many challenges throughout my career, and so it's important to not have a zero defect mentality when training our future leaders of the United States Navy.
Thank you. And I understand that some defects have to result in serious consequences, but as do the sailors who are cited in our report. But they were very clear that zero defects is hurting their leadership. A third issue is the suffocating micromanagement that they cited. Because of advances in information technology and communications technology, admirals and commodores now can reach across hundreds of miles and look over the shoulder of ship commanders. That's not only stifling to dynamic leadership, but it also creates a real risk of those leaders failing in an actual fight, because that communication is very likely to be severed. Can I get your commitment to look into this challenge of micromanagement and making sure you have the appropriate levels of command and control across the chain of command, but it's not stifling our ship commanders?
I will look into this issue of micromanagement. You know, there are times for good leaders to micromanage, and there are times for good leaders not to micromanage. Unquestionably, for example, when a ship is in restricted maneuvering under very difficult challenges, the commanding officer of that ship, for example, has 20 years of experience in ship handling. That is a proper time to micromanage and to continue to train your junior officers for them to be able to accomplish their missions. I think that this issue of micromanagement obviously has been impacted in positive ways sometimes. You know, our systems have become far more integrated, our combat systems have become far more integrated, and there are advantages to that. But to your point as well, too, we have to be able to empower our unit commanders to be able to do their jobs and do their jobs effectively, and then back them up.
Thank you. My time has expired. There's other findings in this report that I'll provide to you. Things, unrelated topics like the instability and the shortchanging of surface warfare officer training, or the corrosive influence of certain kinds of attention to media or social media, but I'll provide it to you. I'll provide some written questions for the record as well. I just want to say I think our surface Navy is in need of some help, and they need to get their fighting edge back. That's the consistent theme I heard from officers, from NCOs, from sailors at all levels. As a former commander yourself, very rare thing in the history of our Navy for a Secretary of Navy to have commanded ships at sea. I think you're uniquely positioned to address this issue. You've got a lot of other priorities like shipbuilding, but as we've heard this morning, you got a lot of fingers in that pie as well. This is a place where your leadership could make the single biggest difference and make sure that our sailors and their leaders are ready to fight and win tonight against a peer competitor like China. And I'll do everything I can, as will this committee, to help you make those changes that the surface Navy needs. But first and foremost, it's a question of leadership, and we'll need your leadership on it.
Thank you, Senator. If confirmed, I commit to taking on those opportunities.
And maybe after you've been on the job for a couple months, if you can get back to me on all these things, and we can talk about what you found while you've looked into it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.